Around the year 122 AD, Roman engineers began building a wall across the north of Britain, a barrier so massive it would stretch coast to coast, and for centuries afterward, people told a story about why. They said a legion, nearly 5,000 trained soldiers, had marched north into the mist beyond the frontier and simply never returned. No survivors. No bodies recovered. No official record explaining what happened to them. That legion was called the Ninth, Legio the Ninth, Hispana. And the question of what really happened to it has fascinated historians, novelists, and archaeologists for over a century, precisely because the honest answer is far stranger, and far less certain, than the legend suggests. To understand why this mystery took hold so powerfully, we need to look at what the Ninth Legion actually was, and how much Rome depended on units exactly like it. By the time of the Ninth's disappearance from historical record, Rome's military machine had conquered most of the known world through discipline as much as brute force. A legion wasn't just a group of fighters. It was a self-contained army of roughly 5,000 men, complete with engineers, medics, and supply officers, capable of building roads, forts, and entire fortified camps in a single day of marching. Soldiers carried heavy packs, sometimes over 60 pounds of equipment, wore segmented armor that could deflect a sword strike, and trained constantly, even when there was no war to fight. Legio the Ninth had a long and respected record. It fought in Spain. It fought under Julius Caesar. It helped conquer southern Britain after the Roman invasion in 43 AD, decades before its story turned strange. By around 108 AD, the Ninth Legion was stationed at Eboracum, the Roman fortress that would eventually become the city of York, in northern England. Inscriptions and building evidence confirm its presence there during this period. This was the edge of Rome's world, a frontier zone where the organized, sun-warmed culture of the Mediterranean met the cold, wet hills of ancient Britain, and where local tribes, sometimes called the Picts by later Roman writers, remained fiercely resistant to Roman control. And then, according to the version of events that became popular over the following centuries, the trail simply goes cold. If a story like this, where the historical record itself becomes the mystery, is the kind of thing that keeps your attention, it's worth sitting with the details here. Where what comes next depends entirely on what evidence can, where cannot, actually tell us. The legend, as it developed, claimed that around 117 or 120 AD, the Ninth Legion marched north into Caledonia, the Roman name for what is now Scotland, to put down a rebellion or punish hostile tribes. As never came back. No dispatch survived. No monument recorded their deaths in battle. The theory gained enormous popular traction in the 20th century, especially after the 1954 novels The Eagle of the Ninth by Rosemary Sutcliffe imagined the Legion's fate as a doomed march into hostile northern territory, its standard, the sacred eagle that represented a legion's honor, lost forever in the mist. It's a powerful image. A proud army swallowed by a landscape it never understood. But here is where the story shifts, and where honest historical research complicates a version of events that fiction made famous. The truth is that the Ninth Legion's disappearance from surviving records does not necessarily mean it was destroyed in Britain at all. Roman military records from this period are frustratingly incomplete, full of gaps that have nothing to do with mystery and everything to do with the simple fact that paper, wood, and parchment rarely survived 2,000 years. Historians point out that legions were reorganized, renamed, transferred, and sometimes folded into other units throughout Roman history, often without dramatic explanation. What we do know, based on archaeological evidence, is that the Ninth Legion was definitely at York as late as around 108 AD. After that point, references to it become inconsistent. Some historians have proposed it may have been transferred to the eastern frontier of the empire, possibly to deal with conflicts in Judea or along the Danube, and destroyed there instead, far from Britain entirely. Others suggest evidence, including tile stamps and inscriptions found in the Netherlands, may place the Ninth Legion, or at least part of it, in continental Europe as late as the 120s AD, which would directly contradict the idea that it vanished in Scotland. This is the deeper mystery, and it's more interesting than the campfire version most people know. It's not simply where did the Ninth Legion go. It's why did an entire elite unit of Rome's military machine fade so quietly from the historical record that we still cannot agree, nearly 2,000 years later, on the basic outline of its final years. Before we go further, it's worth pausing on how strange this uncertainty really is. Because Rome was famous for documenting almost everything. Tax records, troop movements, building inscriptions, military honors, they carved their history into stone wherever they went. For a legion this significant to simply blur out of clarity tells us something important about the limits of even the best documented ancient societies. So what do we actually know happened along that frontier, the kind of evidence that isn't legend, but hard archaeology? We know that sometime in this general period, Roman control in northern Britain faced serious pressure. A biography of the Emperor Hadrian, written by a later Roman historian, mentions that the Britons could not be kept under Roman control around this time, a vague but suggestive line that historians have connected to unrest or military setbacks in the region, without ever explicitly naming the Ninth Legion as a casualty of that unrest. It's exactly the kind of surviving fragment that invites speculation but resists certainty. We also know what came next. And this is where the story's most visible legacy begins. Around 122 AD, Emperor Hadrian visited Britain and ordered the construction of a massive defensive wall, later called Hadrian's Wall, stretching approximately 73 miles across the width of northern England. It remains one of the most impressive surviving structures from the Roman world, built from stone and turf, punctuated by forts, gates, and watchtowers, patrolled by soldiers who lived, cooked, and stood guard along its length for centuries afterward. If this wall was, at least in part, a response to serious trouble on the frontier, possibly connected to the same unrest that swallowed the Ninth Legion's clear historical trail, then its very existence is a kind of physical echo of whatever crisis occurred. We may never know the full story, but we can still see, but stand beside, the concrete decision Rome made because of it. There's something worth appreciating in this kind of uncertainty, honestly, because it reflects how much careful, patient work goes into piecing together even a fragment of the past. Because if that kind of detective work through old evidence interests you, there's a lot more of it waiting in stories like this one. By the middle of the 2nd century, evidence for the Ninth Legion disappears from the historical record almost entirely, wherever it actually met its end. A legion known as the 6th Legion, Legio the Sixth Victrix, arrived in Britain around this same period and appears to have taken over garrison duties previously associated with the Ninth. Whether this replacement happened because the Ninth had been destroyed, disbanded due to poor performance, folded into another unit, or simply reassigned somewhere its records have not survived, remains genuinely unresolved among historians today. What makes this mystery different from many ancient unsolved questions is that it isn't really about a single dramatic battle or a hidden treasure. It's about the fragility of memory itself, even for an empire that believed its glory would be permanent. Rome documented conquests, triumphs, and disasters in extraordinary detail when it suited the empire's image. But not every loss was recorded with the same care. Military embarrassments, quiet reassignments, and unremarkable administrative changes often left far thinner trails than victories did. Modern archaeology continues to search for answers. Excavations across former Roman sites in Britain, the Netherlands, and along the eastern frontier occasionally turn up new inscriptions or tile stamps that mention the Ninth Legion. And each discovery reopens the debate, sometimes supporting the idea of a British disaster, sometimes undermining it. As of now, no single piece of evidence has settled the question completely. The truth may eventually surface in some future excavation, or it may remain permanently split between fragments that don't quite agree with each other. So we return to where this story began, with the image of an army vanishing into the mist of northern Britain, and a wall built afterward as if to seal something in and keep something out. The real history is less cinematic than that image, but arguably more haunting. An elite Roman legion, thousands of trained soldiers who had fought across the empire for generations, faded out of clear historical view so gradually that we cannot even agree on the continent where its story ended. Perhaps that's the most unsettling part of this particular mystery. It isn't a story about a single tragic battle we simply haven't found yet. It's a reminder that even one of history's most thoroughly documented civilizations could still lose track of 5,000 of its own soldiers. And that the past, and carefully recorded, always keeps more silence than we'd like to admit. The Ninth Legion didn't necessarily vanish in a single moment at all. It simply stopped being written down, one gap in the record at a time, until an entire army was left standing somewhere just outside of history's reach.